So let's explore more on the information security sources. So here you're seeing government regulatory agencies that they provide a lot of sources of information. So the NIST would be one of them that would provide more on the information security about the vulnerabilities and threats and risks. So then we have something much more industrial, which is a CISA, that they provide a lot of sources of information about the industry and different sectors when it comes to threats and risks from cyber attack. And on the European part, we have the ENISA, which is a regulatory part where that would help the national and private sector and citizens to be more proactive and enhance their security infrastructure. And then further on security vulnerability database and threat intelligence. So there are two sources that you're seeing here now, CVE and exploit-DB. So those are the two main sources whenever we conduct any assessment within cybersecurity towards any type of product, device, or infrastructure. So on the CVE, you would be finding all those vulnerabilities that you would be looking based on that ID that you identified over your tool, Nmap, Nikto, or whatever you're using. And that would be the way that you would be looking. So that would be the first thing. The second thing is finding the exploits that would be potentially used against this vulnerability. An exploit, you would have exploit database where it's shown all types of exploits that have been published to this moment, a type, a platform, and author who did it. So on each one of those, you would have details. So you can download even those exploits. And if you want to test that against that infrastructure for and that you would do only if you would have authorization, you would be able to do from a Metasploit framework, which we will be demonstrating later on following videos. On the CVE, what you would need just type it's the CVE ID, or you want to find something that is related, for example, to web services, and that might be showing to you all the related CVEs, vulnerabilities to the web services. The same thing, the same way you would do with an exploit. So if, for example, we wanted to see something for Linux, that might be showing you here the whole list of the exploits related to the Linux. Next one, we're going to talk about some things when you would be engaged in security, so on penetration testing or vulnerability assessment. So the first step, which would be the information gathering, so collecting. That would be looking more on the sources, for example, on the who is. So that would be something. You would be seeing that sources that would show you more about the domains. On the who is, you would check that one. So that would be the beginning of the first of everything. Then passive and active reconnaissance. So those two types of engagements we use all the time whenever we step in within this first phase of information gathering about that source of that infrastructure, device, whatever is given to us to evaluate, to assess from security perspective. So as a passive reconnaissance, we would use something that we would call Google dorking. So Google Dark would be those techniques that we use all the time to check on the information gathering. So this would be no direct interaction with the target. So this would be an example. So let me show you an example. And this can be used very easily when it comes to the Google dorking. So what you would need, a search engine. Here we have that one. And what you would do, so I'm going to use just a simple Google dorking. You would be able to find those Google dorking, for example, on the internet. So you would just searching about that, and then you would be finding. So this would be one of the examples that would look on the file types as a PDF with an example.com website. So this would be something. Since we don't have that website, you would not be able to see and check that one. But if you would use just the file type PDF, so that would show you only the file type of PDF. And then what the next thing would be, so we would be able to use something like a title index of site, for example, example.com. So this would show you all those sites that would have potential index file, index page within that site. So those would be not direct interaction with the target and would be very useful when it comes to the information gathering about that target that we wanted to assess and evaluate based on security. Either someone asked from us or we were providing services to them, we would do it that way. On the other side, on the active reconnaissance, we're going to interact with the target. But doing this, we're going to need for environment. So I'm going to use next, on my next step, the Cal Linux and as an environment where I would use and conduct those active reconnaissance towards another environment which is running on a virtual machine and which is metasploitable. Version 3 is very good source of target that has a lot of exposure when it comes to the services and applications. So what you see here, this would be the environment that I would use as a metasploitable 3 version as a target version. So this would be that one that I'm going to use it as a target to point and direct all those active reconnaissance. And since we would do so let's just try to find the IP address. So that would be the IP address that is 192.168.0.115. So we're going to use this IP address whenever we target that active reconnaissance towards this target. So let's do it. So the first thing that we're going to do, port scanning. So finding open ports and services. So that we're going to do by using the Nmap. So that would be something that we'll use Nmap for this purpose. And this would be the command that we usually would be using. So service verbose and showing the ports. So that would be something. IP was 115. Let's see it, how this would reach. And we have the results. The results are here in the ports and everything has been found, what is open and closed. So we see there are a couple of ports open. Next, what we're going to do, so we're going to escalate that towards a vulnerability scanning. So we're going to do some vulnerability scanning since we will be doing some security assessment. So that would be using something that is script, vol, and then the target. So let me explain just shortly this. Nmap has the whole script database, all types of functions that you can use against any target to assess from security perspective. There are different things that you can find within an Nmap. It's not just a network map, but it's more than that. Whenever you would specify -- script vol, so that would be the way that we would be using all those scripts that Nmap has, and there are a lot of those. Let's see what would be the results of it. Since we are waiting for results coming from that Nmap script vol, let's just show you something that would be useful for you to use. For example, if we would use, so let's ask for permission to the Nmap, that would be -sv, that would be service verbose. And if we want to use script vol towards that target, that would be seeing like this. And this would checks for running services, so -sv, on checks for vulnerabilities both too. So this would be something as a combination, which you can do it all the time towards that target that you are trying to assess from security perspective. So this would be something that you would be looking further. And next, we're going to step in on real vulnerability scanning tool, which is a Nikto. So Nikto would be one of the tools that are used for this purpose, and it's here. It's already installed on the Cal Linux. It's one of well-known and good tools for vulnerability. It's more focused on the web servers that we want to try to assess from security perspective. But since this time we have a host, the whole host machine, which potentially have a lot of exposed web services and web application, we want to try to check that from the Nikto. So Nikto-h would be that command that you would be running to see what would be the vulnerabilities when it comes to web application and scripting and so on. So this would identify the target IP address and any host name that is assigned and the target port. So this environment seems to working on port 80, which is not secure, is not HTTPS there, so no security. And here you would be seeing a lot of information that would be collected and gathered from this active reconnaissance on vulnerability scanning. So after we gather some information, did some passive reconnaissance, this would be the active reconnaissance. And here you would be seeing a CVE IDs, which would help you. You would grab those here, copy those, and collect their document as examiner notes for you as a security professional. And then later on, you would be checking on those sources that we demonstrated on the previous videos on the CVE, on the exploitDB, and so on. And here it seems to have a lot of exploits. So directory indexing font. So this would mean that potentially you would be able to run the traversal attacks towards this target, which would you would be able to extract the whole structure sitemap of that application that is already exposed on this environment. And it seems we are having Apache already installed. All those pieces of information would be valuable for us whenever we would assess from security perspective. And whenever those two scans would end up, what you would do next, let me just explain more things. So you would be, after the scannings, you would have all those results and you would sit down in your desk and analyze how you would do analysis. So then you would check all the sources of CVE, common, vulnerability exposure, or each one of those IDs. You would be checking on those websites for potential exposure and what would be the impacts, what would be techniques, and then exploits. And the whole this thing would be going towards showing potential mitigation steps. So what would be those mitigation steps that would fix or lower the impact, the risk within those vulnerabilities? And we are having the results. So we are having the results from the Nmap. So we did that scan and you're seeing the huge things that's being found. So we did, let me go back what we did. So we used the script vault. So you see the difference from using Nmap and using Nmap scripts vulnerabilities. So you have huge results. You have discovered hosts. You have all the ports that are opening and the services that are using those ports. Which service, for example, FTP on TCP/21, and then you would have all the vulnerabilities. So those are all vulnerabilities that you've seen. So you see that CVE ID, which would help you further, and then you would see more on that. Let's see, you would see a lot of exploits that would be used. So HTTP NM would be one of them. In the past, all this extracted sitemap of all those applications would be shown here. And then further, you would have more ports. And then hosts was vulnerable to SMB. So SMB vulnerability. So this might be something, or some Microsoft Windows systems would be vulnerable to denial of service attack. So this way you would do all this vulnerability scanning step.